Full 2025 Women's Evolution predictions including Rhea Ripley, Becky Lynch, and a possible cash in that ETs talk out what's going to happen. After years of fan rumors and talent talking about it in interviews, WWE is finally bringing back Evolution. The women's only PLE first showed up as a one-off back in 2018 meant to celebrate how far female wrestling had come. In the years since, the talent has taken another noticeable jump forward. The main roster now boasts more than a dozen women who are over with the crowd, and now seems like the perfect time to celebrate all that forward progress. Not surprisingly, the card this time around is stacked and features more than a half-dozen surefire future Hall of Famers, as well as multiple women that have already gotten inducted. In an ideal world, they would have gotten a little more time to build out the storylines here, but even with an abridged schedule, there's still more than enough to get excited about. Before I get into my theories of what's going to happen, though, you can check out my record and predictions since I started doing this for every PLE starting at WrestleMania 38. The resume might not be good enough to get me into the Hall of Fame, but it's certainly good enough to keep me near that main event scene. You can check out my scores for some of the bigger recent events, as well as an overall accounting. Jacy Jayne, champion, versus Jordynne Grace for the NXT Women's Championship. Fair warning, I'm not an NXT expert. I watch every minute of WWE main roster programming every week, but I'm not nearly as committed to watching the stars of tomorrow develop. That being said, it's quite obvious Triple H, Shawn Michaels, and company consider Jordynne Grace a future star on the main roster. She's gotten extended runs in the last 2 Royal Rumbles, and this feels like a great moment to remind fans who don't watch NXT of what's coming. With all due respect to Jacy Jayne, who has plenty of potential on her own, this feels like a chance to anoint Jordynne Grace as the next coming. I expect her to win the title, look good doing it, and tease fans for what's coming between 6 months and a year from now when she's inevitably called up to Raw or SmackDown. Predicted winner, Jordynne Grace. Io Sky, champion, versus Rhea Ripley for the Women's World Championship. I don't know what the writers are doing with this storyline, and I'm not the only one. I think if you asked habitually online hardcore WWE fans what plot they're most disappointed in right now, one of the top answers would be whatever is going on with Io Sky. She's, of course, an absolute star and beat Rhea Ripley and Bianca Belair at WrestleMania, and then has been given almost nothing to do in the 2.5 months since. More specifically, she's only wrestled 3 times, once in a draw against Stephanie Vaquer, once in a victory against Roxanne Perez, and once in a victory in a tag match with Rhea Ripley against Roxanne and Julia. That would be fine if she was in the middle of some elaborate storyline or giving promos every week, but for most of that time, she's been a background character. So, does that mean she's going to lose? I don't know. Io remains incredibly over with the fans. When she appears on television or wrestles, she gets huge responses, like as good as almost any woman on the roster that's not named Rhea Ripley. There's no obvious reason to take the title off of her, except for the facts that she's not being used as a cornerstone of programming like a champ should, and Rhea Ripley is the biggest female star in the history of the business, which means there are obvious upsides to her holding the strap. I guess I'm going to pick Rhea, but I'm completely lost here. Predicted winner, Rhea Ripley. The Judgment Day champions versus the Kabuki Warriors versus Alexa Bliss and Charlotte Flair versus Sol Ruca and Zarya for the Women's Tag Team Championships. Let's eliminate Sol Ruca and Zarya first. They should be proud they were put into this spot on a main roster PLE, but there are 3 potentially interesting stories to tell on the main roster with these belts. I don't know why you'd send them down to NXT. I'm not totally ruling them out, but I think they're definitely the least likely of the 4 teams. As for the others, let's start with the current champions Raquel Rodriguez and Roxanne Perez of Judgment Day. Until recently, the belts were held by Rodriguez and Liv Morgan, but the latter was injured, which necessitated some scrambling. Since then, we've been getting a lot of Raquel not really being sure if she can trust Roxanne or not. There's one scenario here in which they lose this match and more aggressively turn on each other. There's another scenario in which they increasingly get closer, only for Liv to return down the road and get mad about how Roxanne stole both her best friend and her title. The highest upside for the titles, at least from a storyline standpoint, is probably putting them on Charlotte Flair and Alexa Bliss. The two have been flirting with joining forces for a month or so now, and their mistrust is finally starting to turn into a casual appreciation. They won their qualifying match on SmackDown and embraced afterwards. Obviously, this is going to turn into a feud between the two at some point down the line, but whenever that happens, it'll be better if we get to see the two work together and achieve something first. It'll be better if we get a sustained run of them being friends, which will make a sustained run as enemies way more intriguing. And you can't discount the Kabuki Warriors. Asuka returned from an extended hiatus and lost in the finals of Queen of the Ring. You'd have to imagine WWE will want to push her pretty hard now that she's back. They've also been featuring Kairi Sane pretty regularly in singles matches on TV as well, so they're clearly high on her enough to move up the card. They also feel more like a legit tag team than the other three, so if Triple H and company actually want to relaunch this division, they'd be ideal champions to do that. Unfortunately, the writers have never really proven they're interested in developing the women's tag team division. If they cared, Katana Chance and Kaden Carter never would have been cut, and the Secret Hervice wouldn't be used to job every week to non-tag teams. So, I'm gonna go with Alexa and Charlotte because that's the best way to make the tag belts matter. Predicted winner: Alexa and Charlotte. The Battle Royal. We don't even know all the participants here, but we can rule many of them out based on the fact that the winner gets a title shot at Clash in Paris in August. Provided there aren't any huge last-minute surprises like AJ Lee, the favorites are probably Nia Jax, Nikki Bella, and Stephanie Vaquer, all of whom bring something very different to the table. Bella likely wouldn't be a huge threat to actually win a world championship, unless she starts getting significantly bigger reactions from the crowd, but it would still be fun to see her involved in a main event program again. Jax is the most believable as of this moment. She held a world championship for parts of the last year and could be a believable threat to beat anyone, especially as a transitional champion. She won the Battle Royal at the first Evolution and is probably the safest choice. The most exciting would probably be Stephanie Vaquer. She's still very new to the main roster, but is getting incredible crowd pops every time she does anything. She's more ready for the main event scene now than Tiffany Stratton was when she was elevated to it.